Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today we are finally going to be talking about virtual reality. Virtual reality has finally come to the simulator, is available, and this video is for both those who may already have it and are already into it, and for those who are interested but maybe be on the fence. First thing I'll do is talk about my first experiences with it in the first 24 hours. I will say they were less than pleasant, but that was actually later discovered to be no fault of the simulator and actually a setting within Windows. So we will be talking about some potential bugs and hiccups, as well as best performance settings for starters, and just basically giving you guys some direction and some place to start with. All right, so first off, let's talk about what my first thoughts of it are once we got moving in. So once I got the simulator up and running and got the VR issue that I was experiencing fixed, I was blown away. It's absolutely fantastic, and I was pleasantly surprised at how much performance I was actually able to get out of the simulator. I was expecting the same thing that everyone else was. I was expecting it to be very minor, very washed out, having to crank all the settings down to their lowest capability in order to have any kind of reasonable functionality. And that's just not what it turned out to be. I was able to get things up fairly decently high. Now I'm still working on it. It was about 10 hours yesterday of me trying to find out what was causing the issue that I was experiencing, which I'll get into yesterday or later. So yesterday was not as much time devoted into performance and settings as I would have liked, but I definitely got far enough where it was still very pleasant. I flew both in the TBM 930 and the Cessna 172. So I haven't gotten into the big airliners yet. I haven't flown the A320. I know initially the A320 was busted, so I sort of had to wait for a fix on that anyway. And plus, again, I was fighting with my own issues. So getting into the biggest things right off the bat is the number one advantage to VR, I will always say. And I think flight simulation truly are the ones who really reap the benefits of VR the most, and that's depth perception. You're going to find your takeoffs and landings feel so much different. You have a true grasp of what's going on around you. Second would be the sense of motion. You can actually feel yourself moving around. It's really, really handy. Some of the tools they have available for us, like the cockpit focus, is basically a zoom, but it works pretty interestingly. So as long as you're looking at the cockpit, you push the focus button and you'll zoom the instruments in, and makes it a bit easier to read the gauges, especially some of the small gauges like on the TBM, on the G1000 or G3000, excuse me. And then if you're looking out the window though, for example, and you hit that same focus button, it actually backs you away from the window a little bit, which is nice because some of the views are a little weird to manipulate. And these are things that are all going to change. And again, keep in mind that I will say from a launch standpoint, they've done a great job with VR. I've seen other simulators that when VR first came available, it was horrid, completely unusable, like just nasty. And this isn't. It truly isn't. They've done a very good job, and the simulator's fidelity and visual fidelity is high enough, even on low, where you get a very nice image. You get a pretty good experience. Now, as you guys can see here, I have not shown any images of VR, and the reason being is a perfect example being the issue I was experiencing yesterday. And the issue I was experiencing yesterday is if you're looking down at your gauges and you keep your head straight, everything's nice and pretty. The second you turn your head, it's like all of your gauges, buttons, knobs, etc. shake and stretch and multiply while the original image is still behind it, but you can see everything just moving around like it's got a mirrored image. And that did not show up on the recording. If you guys were to watch the recording that I had initially made for VR, this is why I decided to take it out, you couldn't see it. Everything looked smooth and crisp and absolutely gorgeous. So be cautious of that when you're watching VR videos on YouTube, as you truly aren't getting a first-hand experience of what the user is experiencing. And this can happen very, very commonly. Much of the stuttering and things that we see are actually in the hardware, the HMD that you're actually watching. The screen will look perfectly fine because it's just a reproduced image of what was already rendered for the HMD. Now, at times, genuine FPS loss you should be able to see on a recording, but stuttering, things like I was seeing yesterday, you won't. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the simulator. All right, so here we are in the simulator. Now, let's go ahead and talk about a few options you're going to want to make sure to set up beforehand. I know these were supposed to be here by default, is my understanding, but mine were not. So if you haven't set up your VR yet, you haven't patched yet, or you're looking to buy VR, these are things that you're going to want to be ready for. So I'm just going to go to keyboard, and you can bind them however you choose. I've got 2 of them bound on my throttle and 2 of them bound via keyboard. If for the keyboard first settings, you just scroll all the way down to the bottom, come down here to VR. You got the VR toggle toolbar, so that's the toolbar that's always up at the top of our cockpits whenever we're flying. You can actually turn that on and off. It would be nice if we could do that in the sim or on the monitors, because personally that thing drives me nuts, especially for screenshots. And then activate and deactivate VR mode. This is super freaking handy. I'm actually really happy this exists. And I know X-Plane had something similar, and I loved it then too. So why do I love this so much? Just to give you guys some tips as you're doing your configuration. Now, caveat real quick, the sim did crash on me once or twice in this process, but once or twice out of probably 50 times that I switched between the two. In Steam VR, for example, most of you who use it will know, you have to typically restart the Steam services in order to for new changes to take effect, resolution changes, super sampling, things like that. What's really handy here is you load it up, you're in VR, you decide, okay, I need to adjust my resolution, right? You can Control Tab, go back to monitor mode, make your changes in Steam, restart Steam, and then go back into VR mode, and your changes take effect. So it's really nice for testing and configuration. All right, so that's 2 of the controls. The other controls is we're going to go find camera. You know what? It's because we're set to assigned. Let me go to all. There we go. And I wonder if I can just search VR. Let's see how that works. All right, there we go. Cool. So do that. That's much easier. But VR cockpit focus, this is going to be like a zoom. Now, this is pretty neat the way this works. You look down at the panels, you push this button, and the panels will come closer. Obviously brings in the clarity, things like that. It's real handy for those really small gauges and things like that, and those readouts like on the G1000, G3000 screens. Camera reset centers your view. Make sure this is bound before the first time you launch VR. If you do not have this bound the first time you launch VR, you have no other choice but to bring up your task manager, however you want to do it, but you have to forcibly shut down Microsoft Flight Simulator. There's no way to get out of it. Okay, and you can't get to the controls menu from it, because what it does is when you first turn on the VR mode, and it's every time the first day you launch it. So every time you completely restart the sim, log into VR, or switch to VR, it tells you to center your head, sit nice and straight, and then center the camera. If you don't have this button bound, there's no way to center the camera. As you can see, there's no default binding for it. We're under keyboard right now. And my understanding was this stuff was supposed to be bound by default, but clearly it's not. Same thing with these 2. I put these here. So keep that in mind. Make sure you have all this bound before you jump into VR. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself terminating Microsoft Flight Simulator the hard way. You have to pull the plug, basically. All right. So these 2 and the up arrow, which is interesting. So let's do this. We're going to... There was a depth option that I saw. I know I saw it. But we're going to want these as well. So I'm going to do start scanning. They say, what? Increase wheel speed. Well, I want 2 of them, dude. Calm down. Let's do that. Actually, sorry. What this is going to allow us to do is to move our seat forward and back. That's interesting that's putting us num 8. I am not hitting num 8. Let me make sure I'm not losing my brain. Yeah, okay. I am not hitting numpad 8, but that's what it's registering it as. Alright, well, that's fine. I really don't care. And I reversed that. That was dumb. Yep, so validate. Come back here. Clear current input. Go to search. There. It's interesting that it's using those as the num instead of the arrow keys, but yet here are the arrow keys right here. Anyway, so this will allow you to move your camera forward and backward, as well as left and right, literally changing your position. And the nice thing about doing this is that when you recenter the VR camera, you'll go back to whatever position you originated from after editing it here. So it's really handy. Anyway, so moving on from that. All right, so those are just a few things that you're going to want to have mapped before you get rolling. Okay, I know I was sort of rambling there for a second, so I apologize. Hopefully I took some of that out. All right, so those are the basic settings that you need to start off at. Now let's look at some graphic settings. Obviously the part that everybody's mostly interested in, right? So let's go apply and save. Go over to general. Nice thing about the graphics layout, you have your PC. Okay, this is when you're viewing on a monitor. Click over, you have VR. So again, real quick, computer specs are down in the description below, so if you're interested in those, go look at them. And remember, I'm running the Pimax 5K Plus 150 degrees field of view. Okay? For those of you who don't know what the Pimax is, this is the Pimax. Okay? Now, the first slider that first thing I recommend everybody do, okay, right off the bat, is to take, just like everything else, just like any other tutorial I've done for you guys on graphics, take all the stuff and turn it as low as you can. Absolutely as low as you can. Okay? The first thing you're going to want to mess with is render scaling. Okay? Render scaling is the first key. You're probably not going to be able to, if you have a lower mid-range system, you're probably going to be looking at 50 or 60, somewhere around there, maybe lower. It depends on what's best for you. The other thing I recommend before, I got to back myself up here. This is where I get ahead of myself. First thing is turn everything to low, and that means your anti-aliasing too. Okay, so I want to make sure that you understand that qualifies. If you look at the different levels, FXAA, DLAA, and TAA, TAA being the best, FXAA being the least. Now, I can tell you right now, I notice very minimal difference, honestly, between temporal and fast approximate. Now, that's not to say I didn't notice a difference. It just was minimal. Okay, it's certainly more than acceptable for VR. And the reason why I recommend FXAA for VR is you're going to save a ton of frame rate. You really are. For example, at what my current settings are, I still need to adjust some things. I've got something a little too high, and I haven't really dove in yet to figure out what that is. But it's still more than playable, especially once I get flying. But current settings, if I switch to TAA, not a chance. Absolutely not a chance. If I turn to TAA, I turn my head and it catches up with me about 4 seconds later. Super bad, super bad. Turn it to FXAA and it's, like I said, it's very, very much so playable for me by my standards right now. And I need you guys to understand, I am a graphics snob. Like, I'm all about the pretty picture. So, I really push things to the limit. And FXAA is definitely going to save you a lot of overhead. It's definitely going to give you some extra room to work with to bump things like render scaling up. So I highly recommend, again, do not use TAA with VR. You will find that the cost to benefit ratio just isn't worth it. Go down to FXAA, and I can almost guarantee pretty much all of you will be able to turn something else up to give you better quality and a better experience. So, first FXAA, then work on your render scaling. Bring it up slowly. I mean, it works in increments of 10. So bring it up slowly, check it, test it, turn your head, look around. And believe it or not, flying low altitude is going to be where your best testing is with these kind of things, especially with VR, because of how it has to render the image. Okay, or even being down on the ground is going to make a big difference. You're going to get better testing from there than you will up at high altitude. But just like I told you guys before, if your primary focus is high altitude, if you're primary flying the airliners up in the ranges, 20, 30,000 feet, etc., hell, even 10,000 feet, really, then set your settings in a manner that they're acceptable while you're down low, but great while you're up high. Okay, the higher you go, the less the video card's going to have to work. It truly makes a huge difference. Okay, so get these two squared away first. Then work on your terrain level of detail and objects level of detail. And from there, start working your way down. Okay, now again, anisotropic filtering. Excuse me. This is another one that you can probably crank. Now, it's going to make quite a bit of difference, especially in VR. It's going to smooth out some of the edges. It's not quite super sampling. Okay, SSAA is definitely better. But, you know, you can work the two in conjunction. Now, where you might save a little overhead, and this is something that I'm going to have to do, like I said, I very much so need to optimize my settings more. But I'll probably be kicking this down to 8x, because between 8 and 16, again, cost to benefit starts to, that line starts to really close down, right? That gap really closes up. From 0 to 8, the gap is huge, right? You get tons of benefit for the cost of performance. All right, but from 8 to 16, the benefit, yeah, you don't really notice as much. Okay, and then again from there, everything else going down, you really have to start playing with. Like windshield effects, I probably don't need that on high, like truly. That'll probably be where I'll be starting to reduce things, and that's what you got to ask yourself. Okay, you know, try to focus on the things that aren't as important to you when you start messing with these settings down below. Okay, if you're, you know, very much so, you know, I want to try to get the clouds high. Clouds are a big one, you know, overcast, flying through them, etc. Especially in VR, it's going to be huge. Okay, texture resolution, another big one. By the way, with texture resolution, somebody else pointed out in the comments on a previous video, I had not mentioned it. They're absolutely right. Texture resolution, if you guys change this, you need to restart the simulator. Okay, this line specifically will not change until the sim is restarted. Okay, and it actually shows you right there. Just quality textures, flight simulator must be started for these changes to take effect. Okay, and I think there's a couple of them that are like that, but let's see here. Maybe it was just that one. I thought there was another one. Oh, maybe not. All right, good. So it looks like it's just texture resolution is the only one under this category that you guys have to worry about. Okay, bloom, another one that can be potentially a big hit to performance that, you know, in VR, again, it's up to you. I'll let you guys be the decision makers there. And reflections. Reflections are going to be another one that's going to hit you pretty hard. But again, they mean a lot. The reflections add a ton. Contact shadows, these are where you're going to, all your pieces and parts join together. That's where you're going to see that. But anyway, okay, that's where you're going to get your line and your definitions of the different parts. So those are the settings. Those are my recommendations for starting out in VR. And this is any headset. It really doesn't matter. Again, just to recap real fast, make sure you set your anti-aliasing to FXAA. Trust me, start there. Then after you get your settings dialed in, if you want to say, nope, Mike's full of crap, switch to TAA, and I hope it doesn't make you sick. You know, and if you've got the horsepower, great. You know, that's wonderful. I'm jealous of you. Hopefully, you know, if the craziness ever settles down, I absolutely intend to go for the 3090, but I have to wait for it to become available and not completely overpriced. I saw one on Amazon the other day. It was like $1,800 from a private seller. It's like, bite me. Anyway, sorry. So FXAA, render scaling, set everything to 0. Start with these two. Work your way up. Start with the render scaling and then work your way back down. Okay? All right, so now let's get into a couple of Windows settings that I think are going to be a major impact for some people. It was certainly a huge impact to me, and it was driving me nuts, and it took me 10 hours to find this stupid thing. Whoever designed this next setting, I really hope something bad happens, like in the aspect of, I hope you spill your coffee, or I hope you get a really bad waiter the next time you dine out. Nothing else. I don't want anything above that. I'm not, you know, nobody gets hurt. But, oh, God, Vietnam flashbacks. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into... did I change something? I didn't think I did. I don't know. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and jump into some Windows settings. So the first thing is... I know everybody's going to be like... This triggers some people every time I mention this one. Game mode. I don't care what anybody says. I'm telling you now, and I'm going to be very black and white here. For my hardware, for my VR headset, for my use of Steam VR, this caused a problem. Okay, now it wasn't my major problem. We're going to get to that in about 2 seconds here. But it definitely caused an issue, and there was definitely a performance increase of almost 15 frames when I turned game mode off. Okay, so I'm still going to stand my ground until I see it give me some benefit. Turn game mode off. Also, make sure captures is turned off, even now more so than ever, because you have less overhead when you're running VR. Okay, so just come up here, off. Okay, here, off. All right, now, the one that really made a difference, and this is the one that took me forever to track down, I could not believe how long this took me, is coming here, this one. This was causing the effect that I was telling you guys about in the beginning. What was happening is, if you are using Steam VR, and you go to turn your head, and all of your gauges, buttons, and things in front of you almost seem like they're ghosting, right? And that they duplicate, they shake, they move all around, they're coming away from their original place. It's like they're stretching away, but you can still see the original image behind them. If you were experiencing that, turn this crap off. This was what was causing my problem. And you can see I was trying to use it. I have DCS there and Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, here's the other caveat that I'll tell you guys. This just started. I've been using it on DCS for a while, and I think it was maybe with the latest update, or I don't know if it's the latest update. I want to tell you guys how far I went before I blamed Microsoft. I wiped the firmware off my HMD, restarted it. I tried beta versions of the PyTool, different VR experience, PyTool VR experience. I rolled back my NVIDIA drivers to see if it was an NVIDIA update that broke it, and I rolled them all the way back to August from when Flight Simulator first came out. Didn't resolve my issue. Finally decided to check in here. I had forgotten all about this setting, gave it a shot, restarted the machine. You have to restart the computer in order for this change to take effect. Loaded back in, and it was smooth as glass. And I put everything back to the way it was beforehand, driver updates, video card updates, etc., and everything is still smooth as glass. So this change made a huge difference. If you're experiencing any of that behavior on any HMD, turn this thing off and see if you get a better result. I can't speak to whether or not this is related to Pimax or this was affecting Steam VR. In DCS World, I had the exact same behavior, and that's what led me to, again, that's what led me away from this as being a Microsoft Flight Simulator problem, is that when I moved over, I decided, you know what, before I start blaming Asobo, let me check something else. Went into DCS World. It's been a couple of months since I've flown. I haven't flown DCS World since the new machine, since I built my computer again. So in VR. I've flown it for tutorials, but I haven't flown in VR. So I decided to launch it in VR and had the same problem. And what was weird is it would come and go in VR or in DCS World. Microsoft Flight Simulator was there right from the start. So anyway, tested out. Both machines or both simulators work great, but for example, like Star Wars Squadrons, now it doesn't require anything like these two do, but I had no problem at all. So just something to think about, a couple of tips to give you guys. Now, the other one that I want you guys to be aware of, if you are an Oculus user, I stumbled on this by sheer coincidence, just trying to resolve my own issues, but if you are an Oculus user who is having the black box appear in the upper right-hand part of your screen, I have a solution for you. All right, so here is your fix. Go to the Oculus debug tool and turn off use field of view stencil option. For anyone who does not know where the Oculus debug tool is, if you ran the default installation, it can be found under Program Files, Oculus Support, Oculus Diagnostics. Inside that folder, you will find a tool that says debug tool. Open that up, disable the use field of view stencil, and the black box should go away. All right. So, as always, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. There will be more to come as I discover more. Like I said, yesterday was just trying to square away the headset where I could just function with it. It was maddening. I was so upset. I was really worried that I had a busted $600 headset, $700 headset. But anyway, So that's resolved. So now the next step for me is I'm going to dive in deep, really try to iron out the settings, find out which ones really impact performance and which ones don't. Start flying over some of the busier metropolitan areas. You know, I'm going to hit up New York, hit up Los Angeles, things like that. Probably O'Hare, and really try to determine some of the impact and then provide some feedback to you guys as always. The G1000, G3000 guides are in development. I'm working on them like crazy during my downtime, and we got a bunch of stuff coming. I cannot tell you guys how grateful I am for all the support, Patreons, the donations, my subscribers, all the views and likes. You guys are absolutely amazing and have truly made the holidays amazing for me and my family. Where at a time where honestly I didn't think we were going to. So my best wishes to all of you guys. I love you all. I hope you are all doing well, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, guys.